19th, and I'd like to
This
call...
meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
I'd still like to call to order this meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. This regularly scheduled meeting is taking place in Room 1A of the Davy Crockett Tower at 500 James Robertson Parkway in Nashville, Tennessee, with some members participating remotely via Teams. The meeting date, time, and location have been properly noticed, and copies of the agenda were posted to the Board of Accountancy website on October 12, 2021. Karen, I'll ask you to perform a roll call, please.
John Griesbeck.
Here.
Todd Skelton.
Present.
Andy Bonner.
Here.
Kevin Monroe.
Present.
Gay Moon. Greg Gilbert.
Here.
Robert Vance. Janet Booker Davis.
Here.
Pamela Church.
Here.
Thank you, Karen. It appears that we have a quorum physically present in the room, as well as Janet and Pam, who are participating via the team WebEx process. So we have a quorum, and we're cleared to continue. With respect to announcements, the first thing I'd like to do is welcome our new board member, Rob Vance. Rob was recently appointed by Governor Lee in August to serve a 3-year term. He is a CPA member, and he represents the Western Grand Division of Tennessee. And Rob, if you'd care to just say any words or introduce yourself a little bit, you're welcome to.
Well, I guess my elevator speech that I use usually is I'm a forensic accountant, forensic economist, and business valuation analyst full-time, former public accounting and tax preparer. But the last 18 years, I guess, I've been in the litigation support world.
Rob, we're glad to have you, and thank you for taking the time to commit to service to this board.
Thank you.
On a sadder note, I'm sorry to announce that this may be Todd Skelton's last meeting with us. He is our attorney member of the board and has just stepped in and performed wonderful service to us. The insight and value that you bring both professionally and personally to the board has been tremendous. And while we're sad that you're leaving our board, we are incredibly thankful for the contributions that you've made, and incredibly happy for your success and your future, along with that of your family. So appreciate your service, Todd, and any other board members have any comments that they would like to make?
I'd like to just say it's been a pleasure working with you and getting to know you, and you've given back to this board tremendously, and we appreciate that your leadership and everything that you've been a role in, and appreciate what you're doing for the state of Tennessee, because you have a lot of other duties that you're currently involved in, and so we just appreciate everything that you do, and it's been a pleasure to work with you.
I'd just like to echo what Kevin and Andy have said, but thank you, Todd. It has been an honor to serve on this board with you, and like Kevin said, your insight, it's very helpful having that legal mind walking us through some of the craziness of all of this. So thank you.
Todd, you've provided outstanding service to us, and I'm most appreciative. I know the entire board is, and it's been my privilege to get to know you personally during this process, and thanks again for all that you've done for us.
Yeah, Todd, this is Janet. I absolutely would like to echo what everyone else has said. Your contributions to the board have really been very excellent, and it's been good working with you and getting to know you a bit. Sorry I'm not there today to see you off. Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. Todd, just thanks. And would you like to make any comments here?
I'll just be brief, but thank you. I felt a little red in the face. Very, very gracious comments, and it has been a pleasure to work with all of you and get to become friends, and really look forward to staying in touch, hopefully.
We look forward to that too, Todd, and hopefully in short order the governor's office will announce the successor for that attorney position, and we'll look forward to working with him or her, although they'll have big shoes to fill. So thank you again, Todd. A couple of other things in the way of announcements. One is a big thank you to Andy Bonner, who will be completing his service as our Regional Director Representative for the Southeast on the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. Andy's just brought incredible energy and zeal, is the best word I think I can provide to that position. It's kind of infectious, and not only does he represent our board well, but he represents all of the state boards in the Southeast region and really more broadly, to the leadership of Nasba. And I just can't imagine a more enthusiastic representative there. Also excited to announce, it's not finalized yet, but the nomination of one of our own board members, Larry Elmore, to potentially serve as Andy's successor as the Southeast Regional Representative on the National Board of Nasba. And so, Andy, thank you for your service. And I can't imagine anyone who could climb higher and shed more light here for our board and for our profession in Nasba's boardroom than you. Let's see, just in terms of reminders for the meeting today, please, when speaking, remember to use your microphones. And for those on the phone, please mute unless you are speaking. And then at this point, would welcome any other visitors or members to the public. I know that we will have some folks coming in a little bit later in our meeting with respect to some actions that we will be dealing with. And so we'll see them as they join us. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the July 27, 2021 regular meeting. Those have been presented. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Moved by John and seconded by Andy. Is there any further discussion or comment on the minutes? Because we've got members that are also participating via the Teams connection, we will go ahead and use roll call votes here, Karen. So I'll ask you to call the roll.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon. Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you, Karen. The minutes are approved. The next item that we have is the Executive Director's Report. And before I may forget, just remind me that we do have one action item that we actually need to take action on arising from that report relative to approval of the new proposed meeting date. And so if I get so entranced, Wendy, by your reporting here, someone just please remind me that we'll need to take that vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did we review and adopt the agenda?
Oh, no, we did not. Thank you for pointing that out, Greg. I appreciate that very much. We will go back and review and adopt the agenda here, which has been posted. Are there, well, first, is there a motion to approve and adopt the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any question or comment on the agenda? Okay, Karen, will you please call the roll on that?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Robert Vance.
That motion passes, and again, Greg, thank you for that reminder. And now, Wendy, for the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. You were previously provided a copy of the Executive Director's Report, and as Chairman Monroe mentioned, we have future meeting dates that are listed at the very beginning, and I do have a typo there on that proposed date of January 31st. That should be 2023, not 2022. So once we get to voting on that, we'll make sure that's correct in the motion and the minutes. Next there I have listed Nasba meetings that are upcoming. Of course, the annual meeting to be held November 2nd and 3rd is going to be virtual this year. And if you have not registered, I did provide a link in the electronic copy of the Executive Director's Report. If you'd like to go register, it is free of charge. It looks like sessions are roughly 10 to 2 on those 2 days. And I think there'll be some good updates on what's going on in the profession. I've also listed the dates for the other upcoming meetings. Executive directors and legal counsel meet in April. Hopefully we're back on the road at that point to Clearwater Beach, Florida. And then the Western and Eastern regional meetings there are in June each year, and we continue to hope we will be on the road then to the locations that we've tried to attend the past couple of years. So the Eastern region will be the end of June in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. The CPA exam, so I added several attachments here. First was the Board of Examiners update that was held just a week or two ago, and really the highlight of that is just the continuing impact of COVID-19 on the number of individuals sitting for the exam, and really maybe not just COVID, but just across the profession, and the pipeline remains an issue and remains a top priority for those across the profession. We had, it looked like budgeted in 2021, 180,000 individuals to sit for the exam, but the actual forecast is now down to 156,000, so that's a deficit of 23,598 as to individuals expected to sit for the exam this year. So my plan in the spring is, or after renewal season, is to try to take our data and synthesize it into more of an Excel document or something that you all can see over time what our specific information looks like. We get reports for each quarter, but it's not all in one document. So I'd like to take a look at that and see how we're faring here in Tennessee with that. So those sitting international is increasing from those sitting for the exam, so there's a lot of activity internationally. Folks are interested in obtaining the designation, and so there is an increase in the India specifically. And as we noted yesterday, the Guam Testing Center is open to international travel, so they're seeing some increases there as well. So there's some more information there that you can review on the Board of Examiners update. They go into Cpa Evolution. Basically where they are right now is they're working on their practice analysis to develop the exam blueprints, which will be available in draft form next summer. What they're doing right now is they have tentatively come up with the content for the various new sections, and they are going through the confirmation phase where they are eliciting help from at least 400 CPAs to review the content and kind of say yay or nay, this is good, this is appropriate, and that's part of their research study this fall. And so it will culminate in the draft exam blueprints that will be exposed next summer for comment, and there'll be, I'm not sure, 3 to 6 months, probably 3 months, a comment period for the exam blueprints. They're expected to be finalized and ready January of 2023, which is 1 year ahead of the new exam being launched. So that's a little bit of an update on where the exam is regarding Cpa Evolution. Also, I've attached the quarterly candidate care report. And this is basically, Nasba has a group that takes a look at and takes in comments from candidates when there are problems with the exam. And we did receive, and I shared it with Chairman Monroe, but we had received a complaint, a pretty scathing complaint about someone that had their test canceled the morning of that they were going to attend for COVID-related reasons, staffing reasons. And so I decided to look into it a little bit more to see if this is a problem, if COVID is causing more cancellations. And Nasba was nice enough to reach out to Prometric and get some detailed information for the Tennessee area. And what we found was there really is nothing to be concerned about. There were, I didn't put it in here what I sent you, Kevin, but the summary was about 4 to 6 cancellations in the current year, last year. And then in 2021, we did have a week in February, I believe, that we had a winter storm that closed several sites. But other than that, it's very sporadic. And really, this is the only COVID-related issue that was noted from Prometric. So we are not seeing a problem with too many cancellations. It does happen from time to time. There may be a power outage. There's just something beyond the control of the test center to be able to deliver the test that day. So just wanted to report that to you all. And then the final attachment is Cpa Exam Performance for the second quarter. You'll see statistics there for Tennessee, and then we also go into overall statistics across the country in two separate documents there. And again, I'm going to try to pull that information and get us some more detail on what's happening in Tennessee. Moving on to communications, we are working on the newsletter for the fall. Prior newsletters are available on the website, and we should have this fall's newsletter out in the next couple of weeks. Renewals will go live November 2nd, as traditionally done each year for those that are renewing on by 12/31/21. We are going to use postcards this year to make notification. And so we have sent a reminder out to folks to be on the lookout for that. So hopefully they read that. So it will be, what color did we pick, Karen? Green? Green. It will be a green postcard. And so we had some problems with mailing last year where we send these letters off and they get electronically stuffed, and a lot of the addresses were not properly showing through the window. We had a lot of return mail, this, of course, would be cheaper postage-wise, and we won't have the address or folding issues that we had last year. So we are hopeful that this will be. I think this goes back to the old days too. If I'm correct, there used to be postcards back 10, 15 years ago. Okay. Notice of rulemaking hearing. So we are going to have a rulemaking hearing in January at our meeting in January, and that will be related to our update to the education and accreditation rules to update those accrediting bodies, and then we also made those changes to education. So we will be handling that rulemaking hearing in January. And that notice went out a week or two ago from Maria. Outreach, I had the following outreach events since our last meeting. Kara and I have set up monthly meetings so that we have lunch monthly and just kind of talk about any issues. And I know we don't have the screen today, but Kara and Jim are on the line if at some point y'all have any questions or would like to talk with them. TSCPA also did the second Educator Roundtable on August 17th, and I participated in that as well. And that was a follow-up with the educators on the one we had done last year regarding Cpa Evolution and the model curriculum. So there were presenters there, mainly from AICPA on kind of where they are from an exam standpoint. In September, TSCPA hosted a CPA 101, but that was mainly myself and a representative from Nasba speaking to students about the requirements to become licensed and how to apply for licensure, how to apply for the exam, that type of thing. So excited to be doing that, hopefully on a regular basis. Next page is the Cpe Audit. So we are done with the Cpe Audit from the 2019-2020 period, and I've included the statistics here in the director's report. We had, the way that I've organized this chart here is that when someone sends in their information on their Cpe Audit, we determine whether they're initially compliant. So we had 505 people of our total count of 547, 505 were initially compliant. That means when they submitted the documentation to Leanne in our office, everything checked out. Now, they may have had carryover hours in there, or they may have had penalty hours already in there, but they had already taken care of whatever it was they were supposed to have done, and there was no further follow-up. And so that came out at 92% compliance upon initial review. So sometimes we receive items that are not completely in compliance, and Leanne has to issue a letter indicating where we need to see additional hours. And so 39 individuals submitted something that was not quite compliant. So that comes in at roughly 7%. 31 of those individuals have since completed the penalty hours, or the additional information that was needed has been supplied. And then we are still waiting on 8 individuals to supply that additional continuing education. If they don't, for some reason, by the deadline, then we would open a complaint. But we are still waiting on those deadlines. I think we only have one that flows into the next year, but everything else should be completed by the end of the year. And then down at the bottom, the second chart there just shows the areas in which folks are missing the requirement. So as we've seen in previous years, state ethics is up there as one of the items that people do miss more often than not. And it looks like year one, minimum of 20 hours in year one was the next, and the total 80 hours. So I think we had a pretty good outcome ultimately of those folks. We're at 97.99 compliance minus the 8 people that were waiting on additional information. And we also, big kudos to Leanne on our staff, and really all the staff, because they all support her when she's trying to get through the audits. But due to all of her work, we had another situation where everybody responded, and that really is primarily due to her reaching out, making phone calls, sending emails, and trying to get these folks to respond and give us the information so that we don't have to open a complaint for non-response. So thank you, Leanne, and to the staff for that. Next section is performance metrics, and these are some of the performance metrics that we are responsible for internally, and licensing time is one of those. And so you will see. Was there a question on the phone? Okay. As you will see there, licensing time, you'll see from August of 2020 and September 2020, and then of August and September of this year. So it looks like we range anywhere from 3 to 4 days to 10 to 11 days in licensing time. Our goal has been around 7 days. And again, when we receive a complete application, we're really able to turn it around in 24 hours. It's the applications that we receive where we're waiting on something that we don't have. They didn't meet the education, or maybe they're short on their experience. They misunderstood how much experience they needed. It's typically one of the reasons. And the other real big reason is we don't have their file yet from Nasba. And so we can't process without that information. And so we're doing well there. Online adoption rate is how many of our applications come in online versus paper. And then case and complaint is how many of our cases are resolved within 180 days. And so our goal there is 90%. So we are well within the range there. And the last part is the license count. New licenses issued. You will see we had a decent third quarter at 173 licenses issued this year, which is comparable to the prior 2 years. So if we have a decent fourth quarter, we will be in line with the 2019 year before COVID. And the licensing overall population has us at 11,809 active licensees and 1,858 active firms. And Mr. Chairman, that completes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. Do any board members have any questions for Wendy?
I have a related question. This is Pam. Wendy, we talked about this briefly after an annual meeting, I believe, but why does Nasba not publish the first time past all 4 parts statistics? People that I encounter really want to know that information, and it seems that other professions publish that readily, it's readily available, and I'm just curious as to why we don't do that.
Pam, I've not had that question before, and so I will certainly reach out and ask. I'm not sure.
You remember after I think you asked Mike Decker and got a number for something, but it just seems like that data should be out there. And I think it's important for students to know, whether it's for us to say we're not doing a good job or to brag about it, but I just think it's a good idea.
Yeah, as you know, AICPA does the Elijah Watt Sells Award, but that's only for individuals that have reached certain benchmark scores.
Yes.
So
yes, very high.
So what you are asking is for the data on individuals that pass all 4 parts the first time, correct?
Yes. I mean, we have charts of pass rate percentage by state and by school, and that's for parts. So, I'm old enough to remember when we went to this computerized exam, and before that, people really did go by the first time pass rate, and 10 or 15% or something low. And but I think it's an important monitor for the profession to know what percentage of people are passing that hurdle on the first time, because the profession sets the gateways, and so I think we need to know how they're working better. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Great, Pam. I will definitely look into it.
Thank you, Pam. Any other questions for Wendy on the Executive Director's report or comments?
Yes, this is Janet. Those individuals, I guess it was one individual who had the exam canceled, I think he said on the day of the exam due to COVID. How was that resolved? I was just wondering. I just think it would be horrible to have prepared and then the exam gets canceled for whatever reason.
Yeah, typically they will be offered just a chance to reschedule. They don't lose out on any fees or anything because it was out of their control, but they just have to go through the process of rescheduling.
Okay, they have to. Okay, all right. I was just curious.
I do have a little bit of input to that, and Wendy, I'm sure you know this, but they have started a new program for remote monitoring, not remote testing, but remote monitoring, so that if one monitor at a test center is on an emergency basis only, is unable to perform their duties or unable to be there, then that monitoring duty can be done remotely. And that supposedly is seen as a device to alleviate this.
I did not know that, Pam, so thank you for sharing.
The only other comment I would have is just to echo your congratulations to both the staff that are dealing with the Cpe audits, but also really to say this is a situation where a board policy change seems to have made a difference, because our compliance rates were far less than 97.99% in years past. And now I think we've had a full 2 years of biennial renewals under our belt. So everyone should have now been through this project once, at least. And also thanks to the Tennessee Society, because I think their CPE reporting methodologies make it easier for CPAs who predominantly get their CPE through the society to maintain and track their CPE, which is, I think, also contributed to the ease of the implementation of the new board policy. We have one action item arising out of this one, and that is to approve the proposed January 31st, 2023 meeting date for the next regular scheduled meeting of the board, the first meeting in January of 2023. Is there a motion to that effect?
Make a motion.
Moved by Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Greg. Is there any discussion or comment? Karen, will you please call the roll on that?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton. Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. The next item is with respect to committee assignments. Basically, the board has three standing committees: licensing, enforcement, and the executive committee. The executive committee is comprised of the officers of the board. And so we have before us a proposed list of committee assignments for those committees. I should also indicate laws and rules is one of our standing committees, although it does not have any action items for this month's meeting. And so we need a motion to approve the proposed committee assignments. And then we'll follow that with a second and any discussion here.
I'll make a motion to approve the committee assignments.
Thank you, Andy.
A second.
Thank you, Gay. We have a motion by Andy and a second by Gay. Are there any comments or questions on the committee assignments? My only comment is thanks for everyone who is serving on committees. That's kind of where the homework of the board gets done to make our meetings run not only efficiently but also to allow all of the board members to have an understanding of the issues of other committees that they may not be on as we do our business. So appreciate everybody's digging in so well over all of the years, at least that I think all of us have been on the board. Any further comment or discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll on that motion?
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert, John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Gay Moon, Todd Skelton,
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
That motion passes. The next item that we have on the agenda is a reactivation application. This is the second of two presentations that are required by board procedures for the potential reinstatement of a previously revoked license. And to introduce this, I'll turn this over to Maria, and then we'll go forward from there.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a license reactivation application. You all received a memorandum from me outlining a history of the applicant's file and what caused the revocation of the license. So I will do an overview of the facts, and then Mr. Juergen is present today, and he will have an opportunity to answer any questions you all may have and to address the board. So first, I will just go over the facts. Mr. Juergen is seeking CPA license reinstatement from the board. His license is currently in revoked status. On April 27th, 2021, he submitted a reinstatement application to the board. On July 27th, 2021, Mr. Juergen's application was evaluated by the board at its meeting and approved for presentation at its October 19th meeting, 2021. Sorry, October 19th, 2021 meeting. The documented convictions include a felony conviction for 17 counts of making and subscribing false income tax returns on January 24th, 1992. Mr. Juergen was sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment and 3 years of probation. Subsequently, that resulted in the revocation of Mr. Juergen's CPA license with the board. 2 criminal convictions occurred since his license was revoked. In 2002, Mr. Juergen was convicted of disorderly conduct in Davidson County and received a misdemeanor conviction. On July 5th, 2004, Mr. Juergen was convicted of prostitution in Davidson County. He received a misdemeanor conviction and was sentenced to 6 months of unsupervised probation. The relevant statute for determining whether the board has the discretion to deny this application on such convictions is found in TCA 62-1-106, which states that certificates should be granted to persons of good moral character. And good moral character, for purposes of the statute, means lack of a history of dishonest or felonious acts. So at this time, Mr. Juergen, if you would like to come to the podium and address the board.
Red light is on when you're talking, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Juergen. Would like to make any comments to the board, you're welcome to do so.
I'll be glad to, answer any questions that you might have about me or anything. I'd welcome it.
Maria?
Mr. Egan, it might be helpful if you'd like to address the board on why you're seeking reinstatement and just any information that may be helpful in assessing whether the board will grant your application today.
That I was convicted because they said the depreciation was taken incorrectly in the 80s. That I had a bunch of condos with some partners in Florida, and it was to close in 1 year by that December 31, and they didn't have all their paperwork ready or whatever, so the owners of the complex went ahead and closed it, and he took the mortgage on all of them, and that's the way it was done. And I've got paperwork, I don't know if it was submitted or not, from the title company that closed it in December. But in the court thing, the IRS said it wasn't closed until they did the permanent mortgage with the mortgage company in the following year that was past December 31. And we took depreciation in the prior year, and that was what the IRS said was wrong with the returns, was the depreciation should not have been taken. We felt it should because it was closed and everything was done, except the permanent mortgage wasn't ready to be done until the following year. And on the closing papers of the new mortgage company, it does not have a seller because it was done like it was a refinance, which is what it was. So anyway, they totally disallowed that and ignored it. My problem was I got an attorney who was a client at that time, and I thought he knew what he was doing. Didn't work out that well.
Mr. Yergin, thank you. I think several board members, if they choose, may ask questions. I have one, and that goes to what Maria asked earlier. Can you give us any light or shed any light on why you are applying for reinstatement? So if your certificate is reinstated, do you intend to go into practice, or what do you plan to do? Can you shed any light on that?
I'm 77 years old. I'm not considering to go back into real practice. I just like to have the CPA designation back, and that's about it. I continue I've got a few clients that I keep their books for, and I do that, and that's what I plan to do. I'm going to retire probably next year, sometime maybe the end of this year. Anyway, but that's the only reason I'm back. One of my clients said that I ought to do it. He's got a construction company. The other client said he didn't want me to do it because I'd probably go up on my fee with him. So, it's just in your hands to do whatever you want to do.
Do any board members have any questions that they'd like to direct to Mr. Yergin? Todd?
Thanks for being here to answer questions. In reading the application materials, there's a gap in the submitted material to date, and I'm just curious if this is an opportunity for you. So, are there things that we should be aware of? So the character references are fairly dated at this point. Are there things that we should know about you or your work or community service or anything that can fill this pretty significant gap between the submitted materials and today's board meeting?
Well, I've just just hadn't done a lot since before this. I did many things. I was with the JCs. I helped I was the chairman of getting the bid committee for the National JC Convention that was here in '79 that we weren't supposed to have gotten, but we campaigned and we did a lot of stuff to make certain it happened. And I was also chairman of the board of the Hemophilia Foundation. I'd done a whole bunch of things prior to all of this mess, but since then, I just kind of tried to get along and get by.
Thank you.
Any further questions on board members' parts? Mr. Yergin, I have one additional question just based on the comments that you indicated earlier. You mentioned that from your view, the primary reason for the felony tax convictions related to errors in depreciation, taking too much depreciation.
Right.
In some of the court records that have been submitted to us as part of from General Counsel, as we've looked at, that basically are copies of the court orders, that were issued when the matter was initially litigated. It seems that it's beyond just depreciation. There are instances, for example, where it indicates that the property was listed on the tax returns for more than the actual cost, and that was done basically to match the figures on the returns that had been quoted to your partners, and you had to put the incorrect information on the returns to avoid being questioned by those partners. And so it seems, at least what the court found, was that it was more than just lapses in depreciation due to error, that there was some intent on that. And could you address that, Mr. Yergin?
Well, the only thing that was larger than what was actual cost was the furniture and everything that went in the units, because I bought all of them myself. I took a note out for all of it, and then I distributed it among each unit. And I think I upgraded about $2,000 over what it cost me, because I got a special deal on buying all of it. And so they spent about, I think I charged somewhere around $8,500, $8,800, something like that for it. And it cost me about $1,000, $1,500 less. But I ended up spending more because we ended up having to get vacuum cleaners and waste baskets and a whole bunch of other stuff that I never charged them for. I just went ahead and paid it. And so I ended up with about an $80,000 loan. And then when the court thing, I ended up with the note, and they ended up with nothing because they never paid for the furniture or nothing. So they came out pretty well on that part. So I ended up only paying about $1,000 for all the furniture, and there's all of them were 2-bedroom condos. So to get an entire condo in Florida, completely furnished for $8,500 was a pretty good deal on their part, and especially since they only ended up paying about $1,000, and I ended up with a note.
I guess I would have one other question, and this relates to the some of the facts that Maria stated in terms of her history of the case, and that is, there were apparently 2 at least misdemeanor convictions suffered subsequent to the legal resolution of the original tax felony convictions. And one of the things that the board will look at is the good character and moral turpitude elements of the statute.
Yes.
And so, it's troublesome, at least to me, that those convictions occurred after the period of the original tax felony convictions that led to revocation. Is there any comment that you'd care to make with respect to those items and why or how the board should consider that history?
Yes, that wasn't one of my finest hours, I'll grant that. But how it started on the first one, I was at Opryland Hotel, and I thought I picked up this lady, but I think she picked me up. She wanted me to carry her to a place over here in off of 2 Mile Pike, and then after she said that she had to go meet some people, and then we could, go after that. So I said okay. Went over there, stopped. She came back and got in the car about 30 minutes later, and we're just sitting there talking, and the police come up, and they arrest, said she was doing some prostitution or something, and I got tied up with that, and then I was telling my father about it. Well, he knew a person that had some problems with something named Greenie. I didn't know who this Greenie person was, but anyway, he had either died or something happened that he had a whole bunch of phone lines, and Dad knew this person, and so he said that his wife wanted to sell these phone lines. Well, I said, what are they for? And he was telling me that, and I said, is that illegal? And he says, you're just going to own the lines. You're not going to do any business. And he said, there's nothing illegal about owning phone lines. So I thought, well, okay. So I called and talked to her, and so she was going to transfer it. And she did. And I got thinking about it, and I said, no, I don't know if I want to mess with all that, even though I did have a lot of financial problems about that time. And but somebody called me on one of the lines, and she told me that she would lease them from me, and so I would not have a business license in my name or nothing. I just got these phone lines, and I leased them to her, and I thought, well, it's okay. And that went on for about 1.5 years, and she was going to buy them from me, and I thought, well, great. She was going to pay enough that would pay off the furniture loan that I had. She was going to pay $60,000, and I owed about $58,000 still on the loans. And so I thought, okay, I'd just pay off all those furniture, and they'll be done with everything. Well, somebody that she had gets picked up or something down in Franklin, I found out later, and they stormed my house and all this stuff. Never found anything, except they did find statements of phone records, because I had those. I deducted out on my tax return and recorded the income that I got from her. And so anyway, that's what caused the others.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr.
And
Yergin.
I went ahead and just pleaded guilty to that because I'd already paid this attorney $10,000, and I couldn't afford to pay her any more to do anything else. And she came back and said, if you plead guilty to a misdemeanor, then it'll just go away. And I said, okay. I just wanted to get rid of it and go on with my life. And so that's what I did.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Yergin.
Okay.
Do any other board members have questions for Mr. Yergin? Greg, go ahead. You may need to just make sure your mic's not muted.
Sorry, Mr. Jurgen, thank you for being with us today. I am reading from the publication from the appeals court. It states, on October 23rd, 1987, agent, and I can't read, I think it's Druick, met with Jurgen again, and Jurgen admitted that he knew at the time he prepared the tax returns that they were false. That is contrary,
That
I
didn't really
think.
happen. He just, I don't know where that came. I read that on the internet.
Yes, sir.
Like, man, where is it in the world? But anyway,
So you dispute that?
That was just, I don't know where that came from.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. Mr. Jurgen, our board member, Mr. Skelton, asked you a question. You know, there is a huge gap, and we're talking about, 1993, we're talking about 2002, 2004, and you back in the documents, I'm looking here, you got character references and statements from people, but yet there's nothing to tell the board that you're bringing to the table that says, hey, I'm who am I and what have I done since these times? So is there anything you can do to tell us what you're involved in or what you're doing, or, to kind of define the character of yourself right now so that we can look at this? I mean, there's just a gap, and I can't see anything.
I can get on the phone. This one client that I've got, this where I work with 3 days a week, and he can tell you about me. He knows all about it, all this, everything. He's been a client of mine since early '80s when he first started his business, so he can tell you all the way up to now if you want to talk to him on the phone. Fiance, I've known her for about 10 years now. I can get her on the phone. We're having a bunch of painters on our house, so she wasn't able to come, but I can get anybody you want on the phone to talk to you and tell you about. I just didn't bring anybody because wasn't sure it was doing it necessary.
Rob?
So if you were to fill out a resume, what's your past 10 years of your employment history? Tell us what you've done, what you put on your resume.
I have done some continuing education, of course, and I've worked with some charitable things and stuff, but it's just mine are in volunteering stuff, and everybody does that off the street and help people in the tornado thing and all that we had, because I had a house that's just down the street from where the tornado hit, so I knew some of the people there, and I worked with them and helped them. But I don't do anything now that is out in front of a lot of things like I did way back. And I haven't asked anybody, like all those letters that were there, I didn't even know they were there. I found that in the attorney's file when I started looking at it a year ago, when I decided to go ahead and I've been thinking about getting my license, trying to get my license back. And that's when I found all those letters that you saw in there. I didn't even know they existed. Because I've never advertised except in the Yellow Pages back when I had my business. I never did anything to try to promote anything. I just did what I felt was needed at the time, and I give blood at the Red Cross. I do whatever I think's needed, but that
Thank you, Mr. Jurgen. I don't know that that's really responsive to my question. What has your employment been for the last 10 years?
My what?
Your employment. What have you done to make a living?
Like I said, I've got this one client. I go 3 days a week, to his office to work with his books and does his tax returns and do his 941s and all the payroll stuff and everything that comes in that's needed on that end. I've got another client that's a construction company. I go off and on and do some stuff for him. I've got a lady, I've done her tax return that since late 70s. She lives in Maryville now. And I do her tax returns and stuff, and I go up there and get information from her. But that's, I just getting by just day to day, just trying to make a living to pay my bills. I've not done anything that's, you can see on the news or done anything to promote anything or whatever, except just whatever I think's needed. And somebody asks me for help, I go work and do some stuff for them and, help them move or whatever I'm needed. But as far as work-wise, it's mainly just those few people I work with that I've done work for a long time.
Essentially bookkeeping type work.
Accounting, tax returns. I've got one lady out in California. I've done her tax return. She's a singer out there. I've done her. She used to be here in Nashville. And I've done her since in the late 70s. Just stuff like that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Yergin. Are there any other questions for Mr. Yergin from board members? Mr. Yergin, is there any additional comment that you want to make in closing?
I just appreciate your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And
we appreciate your taking time to appear here before the board with respect to your reinstatement application very much. And so at this time, I think if there are no further questions, you're welcome to be seated, Mr. Yergin, and then the board is going to go through some processes here to deliberate on the reinstatement of your license.
Here then.
It's up to you. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. If you'd like to leave, you may do so. It's completely up to you. In terms of process, it just would be helpful if you can give us a walkthrough of now the process here, and particularly the discussion about fresh start, if that becomes necessary.
Certainly. So at this point, the board has two options to grant the reinstatement of the application. And you all have the discretion to do that with certain conditions or, CPE, that's within your purview. Or if there is a motion to deny the reinstatement, I will walk you all through the Fresh Start Act. And for the record, we would need to go through 4 different factors so that it is just on our records and that we procedurally we have to go through that. So depending on your course of action next, then I will walk you through whatever needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Greg, go ahead.
I have a question for
Yes.
Maria, please. Maria, is it possible, I think Mr. Yergin stated that he would like to have his license for another year, if I understood that correctly. Is it possible to grant a license under probation?
You could reinstate the license under a probationary status.
I think at this time the board's task is to try to come to a consensus and make a decision as to whether or not the license should be reinstated, and if so, under what conditions. And then if not, if there's a motion to deny reinstatement, then we would go through the Fresh Start Act provisions that Maria has alluded to. So I'd like to just open it up to the floor for board members to express any comments or their views on the matter.
Mr.
Chairman, I think it would be appropriate to get some kind of information from the individuals that Mr. Jurgen is working with, some kind of statement as to the quality of the work, to the timing that he has put in. It's kind of, there's kind of a murky water out there about what he's been doing, other than the fact that we can talk to somebody on the phone, and that's above and beyond what this board is going to do. We want to see some documentation. So I very much am encouraged with the fact that he wants to get his license back. I respect that. I respect that he wants to have that certificate just to say that he was a CPA and now is still a CPA. But we just need, I don't think he did a very good job of standing up and presenting his case to say, hey, board, here's something I can show you that you can touch and see that states that I have turned the corner since these years ago, and that I'm out there and I'm helping people and I'm doing quality work. And that so that we can protect the public. If he were to hang his shingle out and say, come in and let me do tax returns for you now, it would be great to know what type of work he's doing right now, especially since the court case itself questioned the quality and the professionalism and actually the signing of false returns.
Thank you, Andy. As I'm kind of trying to process that and just process what we've seen in the record. And in my mind, felony tax evasion, being perpetrated by a CPA is about as difficult an item from a licensing perspective as I think one can have within the profession. It directly relates to the CPA profession and to the moral turpitude and good character that are required of CPAs in that profession. And so I think we've heard Mr. Jurgen state as honestly as he can, the activities that he's been involved with in response to Mr. Vance's question. And I'm not questioning that at all. But then subsequent to those felony convictions, we have other misdemeanor convictions that would reflect on character, although not as directly on the profession. And so in my mind, the struggle that I have is if you're going to reinstate a license given this record, when would you not reinstate a license? That's kind of the challenge that I'm struggling with, particularly given that the original felony conviction relates to tax evasion. And it's just hard for me personally, to get over that hurdle from a reinstatement perspective. And I realize others may come to different views, and I'll respect those views because, the whole point of this is for all of us to put our heads together and try to come up with a consensus of what's fair to Mr. Jurgen, but also what's fair to the public in protecting them, which is also part of our responsibility. And so that's kind of the struggle that I'm wrestling with that I would lay out for consideration. Other comments or questions from board members?
Mr. Chairman, I think you said that well, and I agree regarding the tax issues. And in my mind, it's further, I guess, a little troubling in it, the significant nature of what he's been doing in the past 10 years. To Mr. Vance's question is tax work. There's some accounting, I'm sure, but there's some tax, some 941s I think I heard. And so I guess it's sort of as a further extension of your comments in terms of bringing those up to date.
Other comments or questions?
This is Janet. Yeah, my, I guess, comment in listening to all that's been said is that I guess I'm not seeing, I guess, a trend in the work, and given that most of his, I guess, most recent work was, as you were saying, Kevin, in the line of taxes, I guess I'm just not seeing enough of a trend to somehow make this seem workable.
Thank you, Janet. Any other comments? So I think what I would do, as Maria indicated, we can choose to not reinstate, which will require a motion and a vote. And as an alternative, we can choose to reinstate with or without conditions. And so I guess what I'll do is offer up a motion not to reinstate the license at this time. Let's deal with that. If there's a second, we'll discuss it and vote on it. And then if that passes, that's one outcome, then we'll presumably go down the fresh start analysis path with legal's help. If that motion fails, then it will be open to another motion, which I think would be to reinstate with or without conditions. Are board members comfortable kind of proceeding along those lines? Okay, so I'll offer a motion that we deny reinstatement to Mr. Yergin. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is moved and seconded, so now it's open for comment and discussion. Any comments and discussion on the motion before the board, which would be to deny reinstatement?
Mr. Chairman, I struggle with this case a bit. The false tax return preparation happened 20 or 30 years ago, and Mr. Yergin, it sounds like has been doing tax work for at least the past 10 years in response to your question, Mr. Vance, and there's, to the best of our knowledge, there have been no repercussions. There are no referrals to the director of practice or anything like that, so I don't see any violations of tax, or at least significant violations of tax rules over the past at least 10 years. Though I struggle with this case. So,
and we all do, and this is going to be. That's why we've got a board comprised of different individuals, and we'll arrive at a decision that the consensus or the majority sees best. Any other comments or discussion? We'll go ahead and vote on this motion, which is to deny reinstatement. So if this motion passes, then we will have to go through the fresh start analysis that Maria will walk us through. If the motion fails, then the floor will be open for alternative motions. Okay. Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
no.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
That motion passes, and at this time, then what we'll do is proceed through a fresh start analysis, and what that really is doing is requiring us to consider factors that might be mitigating, that would, and to document the factors that we considered when we arrived at that decision. And so Maria, will start with you to kind of walk us through your analysis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as it was noted, this is procedural and there are certain steps, so I appreciate your all's patience and as we go through these. So first, for the record, it must be noted that the specific criminal conviction of making and subscribing false income tax returns and prostitution directly relates to the practice of accountancy. The conviction of disorderly conduct does not directly relate to the profession, but as mentioned, does bear on the applicant's character. Secondly, we will go through the Fresh Start Act analysis, and we have 4 factors to discuss and why it applies to the denial of the reinstatement application. If you all would like to reference the memo that I prepared, these factors are outlined A through D. And for the record, we have to document how each factor relates to the denial of the application. And so I will read the factor, and then if you would all just like to make a comment, it doesn't have to be lengthy. It can also just be referenced as to the analysis that's in the memo, but we have to have it stated on record. So first, the relationship between the nature of the crime and the purposes of regulating the occupation, profession, business, or trade.
Thank you, Maria. So I think in terms of comment on that, as we look at the analysis and also the discussion that's occurred earlier, I think there is a direct link, particularly between the felony tax convictions and the profession. I mean, tax preparation is a heart of what CPAs practitioners do, although not the only thing that they do. And so I think that there is a direct relationship between the nature of the crime and the purposes of regulating the occupation and profession on the basis that taxes are part and parcel of what CPAs do and services that they provide to the public. Are there any other comments or questions for that factor that we should consider?
Okay, the next factor, B, is the relationship between the crime and the ability, capacity, and fitness required to perform the duties and discharge the responsibilities of the occupation, profession, business, or trade.
I would say or offer up similarly that, again, the nature of the crime, in this case, the primary felony crime was tax evasion, and there were 17 counts, directly relates to the profession that we regulate when it's perpetrated by a CPA and the discharge of duties with respect to that, and it bears on the capability and fitness of the practitioner to carry out her or his craft.
Chairman, I would also add that these subsequent convictions would, while not directly related to the profession, would be indicative of judgment and capacity and fitness.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to factor C, any evidence of rehabilitation or treatment undertaken by the individual that might mitigate against the relationship of the crime to the occupation, profession, business, or trade.
With respect to that factor, from my perspective, and other board members are welcome to chime in, that really wasn't offered up to us, and so I don't really have anything that I can hang a shingle on relative to that in terms of rehabilitation or really acknowledgement of the validity of the original felony tax convictions based on the discussion that we've heard.
I would say, Mr. Chairman, that we tried to elicit occupational information from Mr. Yergin, and it was very vague, and I was had to ask it twice, and so I was not completely satisfied with that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Vance.
I would also just add that there was no evidence of courses that have been taken that or work performed or just documentation from current customers that he or people he's working with to indicate the quality of work, and that would have been extremely helpful and may have been, a factor, a huge factor in this case. And that if that had been presented, that it may have brought about more discussion, more comments, and possibly even renewal of a certificate.
Other comments or discussion? Okay.
Okay, and the final factor, D, is any applicable federal laws regarding an individual's participation in the occupation, profession, business, or trade. And I will just note that there are no federal requirements for licensure with the Board of Accountancy, and so this is not an applicable factor. If you have any other comments, I'm happy to entertain.
Comments from board members on that one?
Okay, and this is the final step, is the justification statement. The Tennessee State Board of Accountancy on October 19, 2021, voted to deny Mr. Yergin's request for reinstatement as a result of the convictions on or about January 24, 1992 for making and subscribing false income tax returns. The board also considered the subsequent convictions of prostitution and disorderly conduct in making their decision. The board has decided to take this action after considering the aforementioned factors as set forth by the Fresh Start Act. Mr. Yergin, if you wish to contest this determination, you may file a petition within 30 business days of the receipt of this notice in Davidson County Chancery Court, at which time the board must demonstrate by a preponderance of the evidence that the individual applicant, licensee, certificate holder, or registrant's conviction is related to the applicable occupation, profession, business, or trade. That concludes my analysis portion of this. If I could just have a motion and vote by the board that the analysis is adopted and that the justification statement is adopted. And that's just one motion altogether.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion among board members? Hearing none, Karen, will you please call the roll on that?
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Todd Skelton, Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. Mr. Yergin, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to appear before the board. I know that the outcome that the board has voted on is not the one that you were seeking, but we appreciate your time and effort in being here and wish you well as you continue on with your client service and other activities. We're glad to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Yergin. Next item that we have on the agenda is our board committee reports. What I would propose for the board, if y'all are comfortable, is that we take about a 10-minute break and for coffee, restrooms, or what have you, and then we'll reconvene here at 10 o'clock Central Time. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, thank you.
This meeting is.
Thank you for everyone's patience.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
All right, we're glad to hear that. And can we just do a check? Pam and Janet, can you just chime in to make sure that you're still with us and we can hear you and you can hear us, please?
This is Pam, and I am here.
This is Janet, and I am here.
Okay, thank you, Pam and Janet, and we are glad you're here. We're going to, with the board's indulgence, we're going to take one item a little bit out of order, and that is a resolution in honor of the memory of Jesse Keck, which is brought up under new business, but I'd like to bring it forward because representatives of Jesse's family are here. And what I would like to do is read a resolution honoring Jesse and his memory, and then ask for the board to approve that resolution, and then upon approval we'll present the resolution and a certificate to representatives of Jesse's family who are here. This is a 2021-01 Tennessee State Board of Accountancy resolution by members of the board. A resolution to honor the memory of Jesse Morgan Keck. Whereas the members of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy were saddened to learn of the untimely passing of Jesse Keck of Friendsville, Tennessee, at the young age of 23, and whereas the state of Tennessee lost an aspiring young accountant on September 5th, 2021, and whereas Jesse was a graduate of William Blount High School and went on to receive his master's degree in accounting from the University of Tennessee in July of 2021, and whereas while Jesse was working towards his master's degree, he was awarded a teacher assistantship by the University of Tennessee accounting faculty, and whereas through diligence and dedication to his studies, Jesse passed all 4 parts of the Uniform Certified Public Accountant Examination on July 6, 2021, and whereas Jesse completed his internship and experience hours over the course of 5 years through the CPA firm Ingram, Overholt, and Bean, PC, and Whitlock and Company, PC, CPAs, and whereas Jesse was to begin work at his professional services firm of LBMC on September 20, 2021, and whereas Jesse was a black belt in karate from Hatcher's Martial Arts, involved in Boy Scouts, and enjoyed several outdoor activities including shooting, archery, camping, hiking, and tubing, and whereas Jesse enjoyed the love and support of his family, including his grandmother Karen Edwards, who has been a licensed CPA in the state of Tennessee since 1973, now therefore be it resolved by the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy that we honor the memory and outstanding accomplishments of Jesse Morgan Keck and recognize him with an honorary Certified Public Accountant Wall Certificate on this 19th day of October 2021, and be it further resolved that we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Jesse Keck. May I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church. Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe. Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton. Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously, and it's our honor to present you with the wall certificate and also the resolution, so I'm going to bring that to you, and then if you have any words that you'd like to share, you're welcome to. Please go ahead.
I'd just like to thank you very much and tell you a little story about Jesse. When he was a junior in high school, he took a bookkeeping course. And he asked me that summer, he said, "Do you think I could intern for you?" I said, "Sure." And I made him work in my office so he could be sure what accountants did. And his senior year, he asked again, "Can I work with you?" "Sure." He did so again his senior year. And then he started to UT in the fall. And I said, "What are you majoring in?" "Pharmacy." And I said, "Okay, I guess you found out what accounting was like." After one semester, he came back and he said, "I've changed my major, Nana. It's now accounting." And he stayed with that and made mostly straight A's the whole 5 years. So we were really proud of him. And I thank you for recognizing him.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for being such a great mentor and leader. For those that are watching, we have Karen Edwards, Jesse's grandmother, and Katie, Jesse's sister, here with us today. And so I'm now going to present them with the certificate and the resolution here. Thank you all again for taking time to come down from Knoxville in Eastern Tennessee, and we very much appreciate the opportunity to honor Jesse. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, we will now proceed to the board committee reports of the agenda. For those that are watching, we typically have 4 standing committees here, and 3 of the committees actually have action items before the board. Those committees are Licensing, Enforcement, and the Executive Committee, which is comprised of the officers of the board. And so we'll start with the Licensing Committee. All of the committees met yesterday and went through the detailed action items that we will be taking action on, and had the opportunity to ask questions of both the staff and also board members to chime in and contribute comments and discussion. And so we'll start with the Licensing Committee, Pam, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Let me add my condolences to the Keck family and thank them for being here to share this outstanding young man with us. We have several items for this committee. The first one is, the first group consists of credit extension requests. First, Diachi Joe has passed BEC and FAR. They both expire 12/31/21. Has 2 parts remaining, has asked for a year's extension. This person is in China, and we know that travel has been impossible to sit. The Guam test site is now open, and so the committee moves that we extend not a year, but rather 7 months to July 31st, in keeping with other decisions we've made and in light of the somewhat eased travel restrictions, and that would also take us to the next board meeting. Kevin, do we need to go ahead and vote individually on each one?
I think on these, I would prefer to go ahead and vote individually if we should. Okay. Thanks, Pam.
Okay. So we are moving for a July 31st, 2022 extension. Can we have a roll call vote?
I hadn't heard a second here, so.
You are so right.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Now we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Robert Vance.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item is for Quan Zong, a very similar situation, also in China, unable to travel in recent months, has passed auditing, which expired 9/30/21, has 3 parts remaining, and had asked for an extension of 6 months. We are moving to extend to July 31st, 2022. It coincides with the next board meeting in case further consideration is necessary, and is in keeping with the prior decision.
Thank you. So is there a motion to extend?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you, Rob. Is there any further comment or discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. Pam, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
All right. Isaac Garrett is the next request. This person's auditing part would have expired 6/30/21, was extended to 9/30/21 as part of the blanket extension, had originally scheduled the other 3 parts for August and September, but did not take them due to the Delta variant. This person, Mr. Garrett, has provided documentation from his doctor verifying a medical comorbidity that would have made sitting during that time risky because of COVID at a time when the Delta variant was prevalent. This person's had requested an extension of auditing for 6 months. The committee is moving to extend to July 31st, 2022 for similar reasons for the prior two.
Okay, so we have a motion by Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon. Todd Skelton. Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you, Karen. The motion passes. And Pam, I'll turn the floor back to you.
All right, the next individual is Curtis Hunt, who has passed auditing in BEC. Auditing would have expired 9/10/21, but was extended to 9/30/21, an extension of just 20 days due to the blanket extension. Has recently recommitted to passing the Cpa exam, due in part to encouragement from his employer. He had requested a 3-month extension to complete FAR and REG. Due to difficulty in scheduling during the summer of 2020, the committee is moving to extend to December 31st, 2021.
Okay, we'll take that in the form of a motion. Pam, is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
need to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay. Thank you, Gay. Karen, will you please go ahead and call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Robert Vance.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes, noting also that Gay Moon has recused from this particular vote. Floor is back to you, Pam.
All right, the last credit extension request is from Chris Smith, who has passed 3 parts of the exam. Auditing in BEC expired September 30th, having been extended with a blanket extension, 6 months for auditing, 22 days for BEC, but both expired September 30th. He also passed REG on July 5th, 2021. He was scheduled to take his final part FAR on September 28th, 2021, but tested positive for COVID on September 24th. And we noted that he would have exposed others at that time, and he had also stated that he was still having symptoms. He'd requested a 3-month extension on auditing in BEC for the opportunity to sit for the final part FAR. The committee moves that we extend to December 31st, 2021.
Thank you. We'll take that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe. Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes, and I think that concludes the credit extension requests. But Pam, I'll turn the floor back to you because your committee has even some more heavy lifting work to do on some items.
We do. The next item is a request to use self-employment experience for initial licensure. This comes from David Kautzman, who was in attendance yesterday, asking to use self-employment to obtain a CPA certificate. He has not yet sat for the exam. He does have a bachelor's degree in accounting and is currently employed as a police officer with the Metro Nashville Police Department since 2007. Would like to become a CPA in order to advance his career with the police department. He worked as a staff accountant before that job, before 2007, and also prepared tax returns part-time 2012 to 2017. Reported that he prepared hundreds of returns. He was also an enrolled agent with the IRS at that time. The rules say that a candidate shall have his or her experience verified by a licensee as defined in the Act or a licensee from another state. After hearing from Mr. Kautzman regarding the evidence that he has regarding his previous experience, the committee advised Mr. Kautzman that he should be able to follow the usual rule of having a licensee in Tennessee or another state verify his experience. And we encouraged him to do that. No action was considered necessary at this time, but we did ask that this the notes from the meeting reflect the fact that the board did encourage him to seek that verification from a licensee.
Understood. Thank you, Pam. I think that synopsizes the discussion from yesterday's committee work very well.
So no, we do not need to take a vote of any type, do we, Kevin?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right. The next two are firm name considerations. The first, Drew Lamb has applied for a firm permit under the name KLLW LLP, and he explained that the letters KLLW stand for the last names of 4 college friends who developed an idea for a firm back when they were in college. The staff brought this matter to the board because of a question about whether the name meets the board rules. Mr. Lamb submitted his application for the firm and also an operating agreement. The operating showed that Mr. Lamb and Mr. Kahan, who is the K in that acronym, would be involved in the firm. However, the firm application indicates that Mr. Drew would hold 100% ownership. So the committee, because there was a discrepancy between the organization type of LLP and the facts as presented with Mr. Drew having 100% ownership, the committee is not bringing a motion at this time because we believe that such an action must be deferred until the firm's permit is resubmitted with the correct form of organization.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that and agree that no action or vote on that name is necessary.
Okay, the second name is George Fuller, who has applied for a firm permit under the name A3 Accounting Services. Mr. Fuller explained that his reason for choosing the name A3 related to the names of his daughters and also the fact that it would appear high in an alphabetical list. The rules prohibit providing information about or indicating an association with persons who are not members of the firm. Also, an acronym is allowed as long as the words that create the acronym meet all of the requirements. The committee moves to accept the firm permit under this proposed name because we do not believe that it violates the rules concerning firm names. So we are moving to accept the firm permit.
Okay, thank you, Pam. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you, Gay. Is there any further comment or discussion on this one? Karen, will you please go ahead and call the roll?
Make sure your mic's on.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Craig Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Evan Monroe.
Aye.
Aye.
Elton.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Karen. The motion passes unanimously. And Pam, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
All right, this is our final item, and this is consideration of the Certified Associate Project Management Exam for CPE credit. This request was brought from Strouk Stramatis, who is a licensee, requested that we approve this for CPE credit. This exam is designed for entry-level project managers and requires a prerequisite of 23 hours of project management education before sitting for the exam. It is administered by the Project Management Institute, which also offers the Project Management Professional Exam, which has already been approved for CPE credit. Similar exams that receive CPE credit are the Certified Management Accountant and the Certified Information Systems Auditor exams, and these receive CPE credit equal to 5 times the length of the exam. Since this exam is 3 hours long, it would carry 15 hours of CPE credit, and the proposed technical field of study is management services. The committee moves that we approve the CAPM exam for 15 hours of CPE credit in management services due to its similarity with approved exams.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Appreciate that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a second. Thank you, John. Is there any further comment or discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton. Aye. Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you, Karen. That motion also passes unanimously. And Pam, thank you for running through and taking the chairpersonship of this committee and also running through those items with such great synopses of the actions and discussions from the board committee meetings yesterday.
Thank you, Kevin.
The next committee that has action before the board is the Enforcement Committee, which this year is being chaired by Greg Gilbert. So, Greg, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I think yesterday I probably failed to thank Wendy and Maria and Sherry and the staff for all the work that you've done on the legal report. So I apologize for not doing that yesterday, but thank you very much for your excellent work. The committee reviewed a cases and complaints report yesterday and some discussion, but no action items regarding that. That report is in your package. You do have a revised legal report that was done either last night or early this morning, and I think each of you have a hard copy of that. I don't know that it's on the iPads at this point, but so there are 13 cases that we reviewed yesterday and have recommendations. The first category is the consent agenda, and under that topic there are 6 cases, and the committee recommends closing all 6 cases. There are 2 letters of instruction recommended. That's cases 2 and 3, and 1 letter of warning, and that's case number 6. Those come as recommendations to the board from the committee.
Thank you, Greg. So we'll take that as a motion to approve the recommendations for cases 1 through 6 in the consent agenda. Are there any further comments or questions? Not Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe. Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Thank you, Karen. That motion passes unanimously. And Greg, floor is yours again.
Thank you. Under proposed discipline, we have cases 7 through 11, and there are 5 cases there. You have the legal report and legal synopsis. There's varying disciplinary recommendations that's in your package, and the committee recommends approval of all the disciplinary actions under the proposed discipline section.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. One discussion point, just noting that arising from the committee discussions yesterday, the recommendation for case number 7 was changed from a recommended civil penalty of $500 to a recommended civil penalty of $1,000, which is reflected in the revised legal report. Are there any other questions or comments? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe. Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Robert Vance.
Thank you. That motion passes for cases, recommendations in cases 7 through 11. And Greg, turn it back over to you.
Mr. Chair. There are two cases under the representations, and I believe that it's the chair's preference that we vote on those individually. So case number 12 involved unlicensed activity and a peer review violation, and the proposed discipline is in your package, a civil penalty of $1,500 and require respondent to close firm permit. That is a recommendation from the Enforcement Committee.
Thank you, Greg. We have a motion there. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? So in essence, from what I recall of the discussion yesterday, the revision here is really to drop the requirement for completing a peer review, basically due to the dissolution of the firm from the representation that we had. Is that correct, Marie?
Yeah, there wasn't a requirement to close the firm permit, was there?
Yes. Janet Booker Davis is correct. There is a requirement for the respondent to close the firm permit.
Yes.
And that is in the legal report as revised.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. I didn't know if that was a question or a statement.
Just to clarify, because we didn't get this via email, the members on the phone don't have it. If you have it and can email it to them.
Yes.
Okay, is there any further discussion on case number 12? Okay, Karen, will you please call the roll on that?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Greg, back to you.
And the last case is case number 13, and that involves fiscal dishonesty, evasion of state use tax. The discipline, as recommended by the committee, is suspension of individual license, civil penalty of $2,000, and completion of 3-part Nasba ethics course. Action against firm permit has been dropped, and the current firm name will be permitted despite owner's individual license status. Respondent will be required to relinquish majority ownership interest in the firm.
Thank you. If you're stating that in the form of a motion, we'll take that. And is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will just note that because I sat in with staff on the informal hearing that was conducted with the respondent, I'm going to abstain from this vote. Any further comment or discussion? Not. Karen, will you call the roll? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Todd.
In the recommendation, the next to last bullet point, I think this is implied, but in reading it again, with respect to maintaining the firm name throughout the suspension period, I think we would also, so because he has to come back for reinstatement, which is its own process, is that also implied that if he waits a long time for reinstatement or is denied reinstatement, what happens to the firm name?
Good question. Go ahead.
So under the rules, there's a provision that they would essentially, I believe it expires, is it 2022? December 31st, 2022 for the firm name, and they would have to come into compliance. It's either 30 or 60 days, but I didn't specifically put it in the consent order because it was covered in the rules already. But they would have to, if he does not reinstate, then they would have to change their name. Or if his reinstatement is denied, the firm would have to change its name.
The timing work that for the reinstatement process, do those dual timelines work out such that they would have potentially have resolution of any reinstatement application before they have to?
Yes. If we discussed this at the informal conference, but we discussed allowing him to, because it is a 2-meeting process, that he could apply for reinstatement. We would evaluate that application at the October meeting of 2022, and then it would be evaluated in January 2023. So it would be within the,
When's the deadline for the firm? When would the deadline for the firm decision be?
I believe it's the expiration of the firm, and the renewal would be 2022, December 31st, 2022. And then I have to double check the rules. It's either 30 days or 60 days that they have to come into compliance in the event that he's no longer licensed.
At the January meeting.
Yes.
It's 60 days to come into compliance, but now that Todd's brought this up, when somebody renews a firm permit, we don't physically touch each one to review ownership information. So it might be good to be more specific in the consent order, and then potentially flag it if possible, so staff is aware when it comes through that we need to review for that matter.
So, Wendy, then that would be kind of handled through the consent order. Is there a view that we would need to modify the new recommendation on the representation to cover that?
I don't believe so. It's covered. I can specify that to them, but I think it's covered under our rules already.
So I guess I'm not clear on how that is. So it feels like the name should be given a date by which they can use that name through. Yeah. I feel like it does leave it a little unclear.
Assuming everything works out, that's the rule compliance piece probably would work, but I agree that maybe you set some outside date in 2023. Give ourselves a few board meetings perhaps. So maybe you choose we liked July 31st yesterday. So that's an arbitrary date. So whatever works best, but something to give them enough time and notice.
So I'll add a provision that
throughout the suspension period until July 31st, 2023. If the board feels differently on timeline, I'm agnostic, but
Any way that would be affected by when he signs the consent order? Could you possibly go past it? July? Does it need to be a matter of months from the consent order?
So we ended up, the wording for the suspension of the individual license is 12 months or 1 year from the date he signs the order. So it may be appropriate to have similar wording for the use of the firm name.
But like 18 months or 20 months or something.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with 18. Yeah. Seems to be a decent enough grace period to handle whatever happens.
Right.
Make that in the form of a motion.
I will.
Okay.
So I think we have a motion and a second, so this would really be an amendment to the original motion.
Yes.
Relative to that clause. And so let's just try to see if we can capture that and make sure we've got it right in accordance with Todd's wishes in the discussion that we've had. So Maria or Todd, you want to kind of try to restate that given the discussion?
I'll make a motion to amend the approval, revising the fifth bullet point of the new recommendation to state that allow respondent to be able to maintain his current firm name throughout the suspension period for a period of 18 months from the date of receipt of the signed consent order.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. So that's all we're kind of dealing with now is just the amendment. Any further comment or discussion on the amendment to that fifth bullet point? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a motion, and this is just solely on the amendment. And then if it passes, then we'll go back to the main motion. So Karen, will you call the roll on the amendment?
Will go abstaining from this vote.
Yes, I should.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Pam,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Todd Skelton, Rob Vance.
Aye.
Okay, the motion on the amendment passes, and so now we're on to the main motion as amended, which is adopting the new recommendation, including the amendment that we just passed. Is there any further comment or discussion on that? Not, Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Todd Skelton,
Aye.
Rob Vance.
That motion passes, and again, echoing Greg's thanks to the legal and staff for the preparation on this. Todd, thank you for that clarification on the last case, and Greg, thank you for stepping up and taking the chairmanship of the committee, which generally is one of the hotter seats on the board here with respect to the action items.
And Mr. Chairman, I also would like to offer thanks to you for attending the informal hearing on this case number 13.
Welcome.
And I know that takes a lot of time, and thank you for doing so.
Glad to do it. Thanks, Greg. The next item that has action before the board is the executive committee, which is comprised of the executive officers of the board. And the primary action item relates to the need to review and approve the proposed fiscal year 23 budget. And Wendy, for that, I'll turn it over to you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the committee meeting yesterday, we reviewed a proposed budget for fiscal year 23, and there were a couple of suggested amendments made by the committee. One of which was to add an additional person to travel to Nasba's annual meeting. So you should have received a paper copy of the revised budget, which added $2,000 to the travel line item to bring that to $43,500. I also added, to be safe, a registration fee to the employee training line item, so that changed from $10,000 to $10,700. In total, that brings us with revenues at $1,015,000 less the reg fee, so net revenues of $943,000, and our total expenditures at $945,000, $945,608, leaving us at a negative $2,608. As the proposed budget, of course, with some case and complaint revenue, we should be fine there with a couple $1,000s in the red. And I believe those are the changes to the budget. I'll happy to take any questions.
Wendy, I was just kind of looking through, and it just kind of dawned on me today that we were having 5 board members go in October, but when we get into 2023, we're only having 4 go to the regional breakout. And I was a little concerned in that maybe we should consider just mapping them both to 5. And I don't know, I point that out to the board. We've still got a lot of people that are participating. We really haven't done much travel at all in the last 2 years. And so it would seem logical, instead of having to go back and amend that budget to consider that we go ahead and make the budget for that. We can always cut back and not send but 4, but it would seem logical to maybe consider that, since we have so much involvement in Nasba for the board. Thoughts?
So, Wendy, if we were to act on that, what additional incremental revisions would that entail then to the proposed fiscal 23 budget?
Mr. Chairman, I've kind of done the math to indicate that. We would, in essence, change travel to $46,000 on the sheet of paper that you currently have. We would actually, under employee training, we would increase it by $695 or $11,395. That would take our expenditures to a total of $728,803, and it would produce a net expendable over revenue of $5,803.
Thank you for getting that, thinking ahead on the chessboard and getting that summarized for us, Andy.
That would also change on attachment B. It would change that to where we would actually change under June to 5, increase that total to 12,500, and then that would take, as said before, total estimated travel expenses to $46,000.
Andy, are you estimating that travel is at $2,500 per individual?
Yes, because that's what had been estimated for the 4.
Okay.
No, actually,
I think I had it at
it's
2.
2, okay. I apologize.
Okay.
That would make it 45.5.
Okay, I just want to make sure I knew where you were coming from.
Yep.
I can do it by which we add 2,000 to the travel budget and the 695 to the training line item, and map it out that way.
Okay.
Any further comments or discussion on the proposed fiscal year 23 budget, now reflecting that additional incremental add to the travel and employee training line items that Wendy just enumerated? Todd?
What you can pass or no comment, but in submitting through the process with the department a negative budget essentially, does that create any issue or additional scrutiny that we need to document or think through, realizing that case revenue and things ultimately get factored in but aren't on the front end?
Right. So we have done it, I think, twice before without any particular issues. With the small amount, I believe case and complaint can either cover that, or we cut back if we get to a point. From a travel standpoint, that's the area we can cut back the best if we needed to. I think the statute also recognizes that we should plan our expenses not to exceed our revenue and reserves. If for some reason we were in the red, we would have to look at the following year. I believe the way it works is that if you happen to be red for 2 years in a row, then you're required to go before the Joint Government Ops Committee to address why you've done that. And so I think 1 year at a minimal amount has not posed problems in recent years.
Thanks.
Further comment or questions? If not, I'll offer up a motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 23 budget with the additional mapping to travel and to employee training as discussed, to basically allow for the attendance of 5 board members plus the executive director at a maximum. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Is there any further comment or discussion? Not. Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton. Aye. Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. And then there was one other action item that resulted from the executive committee, and that is the review and approval of the Tennessee State Specific Ethics Course Outline that was discussed in committee. And so that was also presented during committee. And I would offer a motion to approve that outline.
So moved.
We have a motion, and is there a second?
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment or discussion on that? Those that are watching, this is the outline that will govern the construction of the required 2-hour Tennessee State Specific Ethics course requirement that all Tennessee CPAs are required to take. There are a variety of formats. They can take it online, they can take it in live presentations, and there are a variety of approved providers for that. But that course and outline are refreshed periodically, and that's really what we're in the process of doing here. Any further comment or discussion?
I had one question about the memorandum of understanding yesterday with the TSCPA. I think it indicates that the TSCPA will provide us each year with evaluations of the course and instructors. And I didn't know if there was a time frame on that they're supposed to do that within that would help us, based on our discussion yesterday, reevaluate each year.
Thank you, John. Typically, they have provided those evaluations for the calendar year, so they do that typically in February or March, and we can review those at the May meeting. They seem to be more comprehensive based on more CPE happening in the fall time period. So we have historically tried to look at them at that point. So we can make a point to do that, maybe even at the January meeting, if y'all would like to see those.
John, does that respond to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any further comment or question?
And as a reminder, Kara and Jim are on the phone if you have any questions for them.
Check my memory here, but I think we still need to actually vote on the outline. Is that correct, Karen? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Karen, will you please call the roll?
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. One of the other informational items that arose out of the executive committee was just a review of preliminary fiscal year 2021 financial information. That year fiscally is not completely closed, but Wendy did present us with comparative information comparing the preliminary results with prior year results that were closed. But no action is necessary on that item. The next item on the agenda is our Nasba updates, and we'll start with our Southeast Regional Representative on the board for Nasba, Andy, and just the floor is yours for any comments that you have.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we really didn't have a board meeting since our last meeting here. We had one in July in Nashville. I just will ditto what Wendy said earlier, that I encourage every one of the board members to really go in and register and be on the annual meeting that's going to be virtual on November 2nd and 3rd. And there's so many issues going on in our profession. You got the pipeline issue and what's happening in that environment. You've got the Cpa Evolution and updates on it, because we constantly get updates, monthly in our newsletters from Nasba. And then the board gets updates when we reconvene, and we're going to reconvene next week. And then also just a model curriculum and what's happening there. I'm happy to say and glad to say that the board of directors of Nasba are coming back for their second visit to the great city of Nashville in the state of Tennessee. They'll be in town next October the 27th through the 30th. We'll be staying downtown and then having meetings at the Nasba headquarters here in Nashville. And so we're excited about that. And I am going to take some of the comments and questions that were asked today of Nasba back to Nasba. I know Wendy is going to ask questions too, specifically what Pam asked. And so I will take those back. And I will also say, if any other board members have questions that I can help address to the board, then please let me know.
Thank you, Andy. Next item is NASBA committee updates. And I also know that NASBA, I think now, is kind of in the process of communicating to members who had requested committee assignments for next year, I guess, following, or at least following the annual meeting. So those will be coming out. But just ask if there are any committee updates. Pam, with respect to the CBT Exam Administration Committee, are there any updates from your perspective?
Yes, we've actually been meeting monthly, and we have talked about administering the exam in the environment presented by COVID. That's been a major topic. The idea of recognizing long-term COVID, long-haul COVID as a disability is being considered by Nasba, and they are talking to attorneys and experts in that area. So they anticipate that this may become an accommodation like other disability accommodations. Nasba is hoping that states will recognize other states' extensions that came about because of COVID. Apparently that has created some issues. Wendy may know more about that than I do. We also were involved in considering the transition policies to the new Cpa Evolution, and I was on that transition task force. That transition was to have become public about a month ago, and Pat Hartman just last week said she was checking on that because she thought it had not become public, and schools have requested that they get that information quickly so that they can start working toward the education needed for that transition period and the new test subject matter. I told you that they are on a test basis doing this remote monitoring. And again, that's under consideration by an attorney, but I think they've already tried that out, but on a very limited basis. And also remote testing is still very much under consideration. They're looking at changing the software, et cetera, and that is still supposed to just be an emergency measure that would be there if we ever had anything similar to COVID in the future. And I was able to be on a panel because of my role with those committees primarily. I was able to be on a panel for the Tennessee Accounting Educators, Tennessee Society of Accounting Educators, that's it. Kevin put together this panel, and he asked me to be on the panel. And in preparing for that, I talked to some of the board members in Virginia who have done a survey to schools and to practitioners about what they see forthcoming with the Cpa Evolution issues, problems, et cetera. And some of the key things that have come out are that people are wondering if cost accounting will be very much diminished, and should we even teach cost accounting as a separate subject beyond principles in the future. And also, smaller schools are concerned about being able to offer data analytics at the level that may be required. Small schools are saying that they may only prepare students for one of the disciplines rather than trying to do all three. So things are very much changing, as we all know.
Thank you, Pam, very much. And also, particularly thank you for service on that committee, which has, looks like a very heavy agenda, and that's probably going to continue for the next few years. Greg, any updates from an ethics committee perspective?
Yes, I was just looking, Mr. Chairman. I received an email.
Great.
Looks like I may be serving another year on the ethics committee. But we did have a Zoom meeting on Tuesday, October 12th, and there are two exposure drafts from the AICPA Professional Ethics Committee, Professional Ethics Executive Committee. And by the way, one of our colleagues and friends, Doug Warren, who I think he was on the board, and I think he chaired this board a few years ago, but Doug is on the Professional Ethics Executive Committee. So anyway, I think that's great for Tennessee and for Doug and for this board. But there are two exposure drafts, as I mentioned. One is a revised interpretation on unpaid fees for auditors. Currently, there's a bright line test. So if the fee is unpaid, and I'm overly simplifying this, but if the fee remains unpaid for 1 year, then the auditor is no longer independent and basically can't do the audit. And so the P is suggesting that we go from that bright line test to a principles-based framework. As an example, if a firm has a $100,000 audit client and the client has paid that $100,000 fee, but there's an invoice outstanding for a year that's a $300 payroll tax amendment, then under the bright line test, the firm could not audit, as I understand it. And so the committee, the peak, wants to move to a principles-based framework instead of the bright line test. And I'm telling you, I was in the minority as I have been in the past, but the committee does not like that, the professional that ethics committee of Nasba. So I think they're going to respond to that. And interestingly, a number of the committee members on the ethics committee, Nasba's, are tax practitioners. And so that's just another little more information. The other exposure draft is revised independence interpretation. And the item under that really the committee does not like is the interpretation would allow a firm to propose general standard journal entries or adjustments for the adoption of new accounting standards subject to the attest client approval. And the committee does not want firms to be able to propose standard journal entries and let management approve. So there will be, I guess, information that will go to the Nasba board asking that we not support that interpretation. So that's the work of the committee.
All right, thank you, Greg. And Janet, is there any report out from the nominating committee that you serve on?
We haven't had any meetings since we last met, and we've completed the work of nominating for the vice chair and for the directors at large. So that completed our work thus far until probably, I guess, next year. And I was on the Cpa Examination Review Board for the past 3 years, and I completed that term and rolled off of that board. So I don't have and won't have any further updates for that board.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I know that Judy has been serving on the audit committee, and so we'll look for a report when she's able to rejoin us. Are there any other committee, Nasba committee related reports that report outs that I may have missed? Okay, I think that concludes the Nasba committee updates. We've concluded the business with respect to Jesse's recognition, but is there any other old or new business to come before the board? And the only thing I would say is, Rob, welcome. Glad that you're beginning your tenure with us on the board. And Todd, thank you for all of the just very professionally and thoughtfully delivered advice through your term. And just best of luck in your other endeavors. And we thank you that we had the privilege of serving with you. There being no other business, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks.
I'll make a motion for that, sir.
Okay. Is there a second?
Janet Booker Davis
is now exiting.
I think by acclamation we'll declare the meeting adjourned. Don't forget to sign your paperwork and get that in to Karen, and then leave your iPads also for Karen to pick up.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.